April 6, 2018.
Volcanic unrest is increasing across the globe, and especially along the Ring of Fire, where several volcanoes are being carefully monitored in 2018. The explosivity of each eruption has its own unique characteristics. The eruptions of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD, Mount St. Helens in 1980, and Mount Pinatubo in 1991 were all enormous. But even these eruptions were pale in comparison to ancient eruptions, such as Wawa Springs, Toba, Yellowstone, and Long Valley Caldera. These were thousands of times more explosive, as shown in these spheres, which represent the volume of erupted rock fragments and particles from the most widely known eruptions on Earth. Recent geological studies and observations by volcanologists indicate there is a 95% probability that the Earth will experience an eruption of a VEI 5 or higher on the explosivity index within the next 5 years. The last time an eruption of this intensity occurred was the 1991 eruption of Mount Pinatubo, nearly 3 decades ago. The time span between eruptions of this intensity has been as long as 23 years, going back 3 centuries, which means the current gap, which is 26 years, happens to be the longest in the past 3 centuries. Therefore, a VEI 5 or higher eruption is overdue. Through the 20th century, as shown in this list, an eruption of intensity 5 or greater came at intervals, varying from 1 year up to 23 years, with an average interval of just under 7 years. As for the first 2 decades of the 21st century, there are no eruptions that have reached the level of a VEI 5 or higher on the explosivity index, as shown in this graph. To assess the consequences of a VEI 5 or higher eruption, it must be evaluated between a short and a long-term perspective. In the short term would be the immediate loss of life and property, which is dependent upon populations. There are far more people living in the danger zones today than there were in the past, but volcanologists are much better equipped to warn people of the dangers that lie ahead, allowing evacuations to take place much earlier. The number of people at risk in this century has been estimated at 500 million or better, which accounts for more than the population of the United States, which then accounts for a lot of people, even in today's standards. As for the long-term impacts, it depends entirely on the location of the eruption. A massive eruption could trigger a year without a summer, and possibly 2 years. This would depend on certain conditions being met, which are the extent of the ash fall and the buildup of that ash, the altitude of the ash plume, and how long the eruption persists. This would not be an eruption like Toba, which ultimately affected the evolution of humans, but rather an event that would catapult planet Earth into another ice age or even a glacial age. The size and magnitude of an eruption will then relate to the extent of the damage that results from the event. The most recent large eruptions are shown here. With the exception of Novaruptu, these volcanoes resulted in the immediate loss of life and structures, which were generated by pyroclastic flows, ashfall, gas emissions, and tsunamis. Here, too, we are referring to long-term consequences for the planet, where such eruptions impacted the climate for long duration, as the ash was injected into the stratosphere at high altitudes. Similar to the Mount Pinatubo eruption, it has the capacity to trigger temperature changes, which can severely affect crops, which can lead to famine and epidemics across the world. In the year 1816, following the eruption of Tambora, abnormal temperatures swept across China, Europe, and North America. It became well known as the year without a summer.
Well, let's hope we don't have it this year.
So